Joining us now is Sourabh Gupta. He is a senior Asia-Pacific International Relations Policy Specialist at the Institute for China-America Studies, and out with an interesting piece. I read it earlier today. India's got itself into a fine mess. It's time to get out and let China and Bhutan work it out. That bold headline. Talk to me about your thoughts going into writing the piece and what's been the reaction.
The reaction in India has been fairly hostile because India has, I would say, climbed up, kicked the ladder away, and doesn't know exactly how to climb down. It is conducting a very serious violation out here of the territorial integrity of a third state. It could be Bhutan, it could be China. This is China, which has effective jurisdiction and control over that area. So it is a violation of China's territorial sovereignty. The problem has been that the two countries have oftentimes crossed their undemarcated, their disputed boundary, which is a very long Himalayan boundary. Both sides have done this to push the other side back when there's sensitive activities happening very close to the boundary line. But this time it is happening on a boundary line where the alignment has been already decided, even though it's not demarcated. And so this is very different from these previous instances of little going across the boundary and trying to interfere.
And one of the points you make in your piece is that it's not even a dispute between India and China. This is another country, and India has decided to put themselves right in the mix of things. And you said even the United States doesn't go that far. So kind of outline for the people who haven't read it, kind of the views that you put out there.
Yes, I think that's a really important point which needs to be emphasized. You know, earlier in January, Rex Tillerson, while he was the nominee for Secretary of State, had talked about the South China Sea islands, which China administers but are disputed, and he might try to see that the American forces might blockade those islands or even evict the Chinese from those islands. Here we have the situation where India, on behalf of a third country, Bhutan, with which it has formal relations and a formal and an informal obligation, is trying to evict the Chinese from territory in which the Chinese have effective control. The US, when it extends obligations to its allies, it does so only to territories which the allies control. For example, Japan and the Diaoyu Senkaku Islands, but it does not extend that guarantee or that obligation to the Kuril Islands, which Russia controls. So imagine if the US was to, on behalf of Japan, go and try to dislodge the Russians from the Kuril Islands. It's somewhat a parallel out there, so one has to understand the gravity of what India has done. I understand the security logic why India has done it. It's a very sensitive point on the long trilateral, tri-junction boundary, but there are also certain rules in international relations that one must observe, and one can create a real dangerous situation.
Clearly, if other countries decide to do the same thing, you're looking at quite a mess out there. And talk to me about a solution. What do you see as the solution? I mean, you laid out there, you think India needs to move.
India needs to move, but it doesn't need to be a humiliating climb down. India has good relations with Bhutan. What India needs to do is press Bhutan, and Bhutan will do it willingly on India's behalf, is to speak directly with the Chinese government that in that area where the Chinese were constructing a road newly is an area which, yes, is under Chinese effective control, but it is also disturbs the peace and tranquility of the region and the strategic environment of the region. And therefore, Bhutan should try to frame a boundary protocol with China, which says, yes, China, you have effective control of that area, but that road building needs to stop, you need to desist, and no further road building needs to happen. In parallel, India needs to, at that point of time, move its forces back to its own territory unilaterally. This is an issue between Bhutan and China, not between China and India. So the right lines of communication have to be between Bhutan and China, and India in parallel moving it out and trying to get whatever understandings it has.
Quickly, if you can, yes. You think that's likely? Is that what we're going to see? Is that going to be the resolution?
Not at this point of time. India still thinks that it can do emollient talk and it can do quiet talk and try to be forthcoming with China in the context of a mutual discussion with China. I think they will be disabused of this very clearly by the Chinese at the diplomatic and political level, and that they must then try to find other ways in which they can do this. And I think this is an absolutely honorable way, and it'll, at the end of the day, it will be to the benefit of all sides that such a serious infringement happened, and yet not a shot got fired, and it will be to the credit of all parties.
Well, Sourabh Gupta suggesting a solution to this. Thanks so much for putting it out there for us and joining us here. Thank you.